Captain Lee Minho stood on the bridge of the human flagship, Difa and Dawn watching the stars through the massive viewing screen. The year was 2387 and humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for almost 200 years. Life was good for humans in space. They had friends among the 7 major species of the galaxy, and their technology was growing stronger every day. The bridge was busy with activity as usual. Lieutenant Park Sora monitored the communication systems while Commander Kim Yuna studied intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Everything seemed normal until an urgent message arrived from Harmony Point, the neutral space station where all major diplomatic meetings took place. Ambassador Park Ji-won had been at Harmony Point for 3 days, attending what was supposed to be a routine council meeting about trade agreements and border security. Nothing seemed unusual about this meeting. The other 6 species had sent their usual representatives, the bird like Avrans with their sharp eyes and quick movements, the crystalline lithoids who spoke in musical tones, the aquatic depths who needed special water suits to survive in normal atmosphere, the energy-based luminals who appeared as floating lights of different colors, the insect-like swarms with their collective mind and perfect coordination, and the plant-based botanics who moved slowly but thought deeply about every decision. But something was wrong. Park Ji-won felt it in the way the other ambassadors looked at her. There were whispered conversations that stopped when she approached, secret meetings that happened without human presence. The Avrans who usually greeted her warmly now avoided eye contact. The lithoids who loved to discuss philosophy with humans suddenly had no time for conversation. On the 3rd day of the meeting, the truth came out in the most brutal way possible. The 6 alien species had called for a special session. Ambassador Park Ji-won entered the Great Council chamber expecting to discuss mining rights in the Outer Rim. Instead, she found herself facing a tribunal. The chamber was circular with 7 seats, arranged in a perfect circle. For 2 centuries, the human seat had been equal to all others, but today, something was different. The other 6 seats were positioned facing the human seat like judges. Facing a criminal, Supreme Chancellor Vorthak of the Avrans stood first. His feathers were ruffled in a way that meant extreme agitation among his people. His voice was sharp and cold as he spoke. "We have made a decision about humanity," he said. "The other species have voted. You are no longer welcome in the Galactic Council." Park Ji-won felt her heart stop. She had expected many things, but not this. The room seemed to spin around her as she tried to process what she was hearing. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The lithoid representative, Crystal Song Eternal, stepped forward. Her body sparkled with angry red light as she spoke. "Humanity has become too aggressive, too dangerous. You advance your technology too quickly. You ask too many questions. You change too much too fast. But we have been loyal allies," Park Ji-won protested. "We have fought beside you in 3 wars. We have shared our discoveries. We have helped build this council into what it is today." The depths representative, Ambassador Deep Current, made a sound like water rushing over rocks. "That is exactly the problem," he said. "You help too much. You discover too much. You make the rest of us look weak and slow." The truth was becoming clear to Park Ji-won. This was not about aggression or danger. This was about fear. The other species were afraid of humanity. They were afraid of how quickly humans learned and adapted. They were afraid of human creativity and determination. They were afraid that humans would soon surpass them in every way. The energy being called bright thought flickered with nervous patterns. "You have 1 solar year to leave known space," he said. "All human colonies, all human ships, all human presence must be gone. If you refuse, we will destroy every human world, starting with Earth." Park Ji-won stood slowly, her mind racing. She thought of the billions of humans living peaceful lives across the galaxy. She thought of children playing in parks on New Tokyo. She thought of farmers growing food on agricultural worlds. She thought of scientists making discoveries that helped everyone. "You would commit genocide," she said quietly. The swarm representative made a clicking sound that meant cold calculation. "We would remove a threat to galactic stability." The botanic representative, Ancient Root, spoke in his slow, deep voice. "We offer mercy. Take your civilian ships, take basic supplies. Leave quietly, and we will not pursue you." But Park Ji-won knew what this meant. Without their military ships, without their advanced technology, without their industrial base, humanity would be helpless refugees scattered across the void. They would slowly die out, forgotten and alone. Meanwhile, Aboard the Defiant Dawn, Captain Lee Minho received the transmission from Harmony Point. The message was coded, but the meaning was clear: humanity was being expelled from the galaxy they had called home. For 2 centuries, Commander Kim Yuna had been expecting this. Her intelligence network had detected strange patterns in alien communications for months. Secret meetings, encrypted messages, military buildups near human space, she had warned the government. But no one believed that their allies would betray them. The news spread quickly through the human fleet and then to all human worlds. Earth received the message first. President Han Jun-ho was in his office when the communication arrived. He read it 3 times before the reality sank. Aeon colony worlds across human space. People watched their news feeds in shock and horror. Families who had lived peacefully for generations suddenly faced the prospect of losing everything. Children asked their parents why their alien friends suddenly hated them. Dr. Song Minji was in her secret laboratory when the news reached her. She had been working on revolutionary quantum technology in hidden research stations scattered across the outer rim. Her work was still experimental, but it showed incredible promise: matter manipulation, instant communication across vast distances, energy generation that could power entire worlds. She realized that her research might be humanity's only hope for survival. But she needed time and resources. The aliens were giving humanity 1 year to leave. That was not enough time to complete her work. Unless President Han Jun-ho called an emergency session of the Human Council, the greatest minds and leaders of humanity gathered in the secure chambers beneath Geneva, Earth. Representatives from every human world participated through quantum communication. The debate was intense. Some wanted to fight immediately. Others wanted to negotiate for more time. A few suggested surrendering completely and accepting whatever fate the aliens chose, but Captain Lee Min-ho had a different idea. He stood before the assembled leaders and spoke with quiet determination. "We will accept their terms," he said. "We will leave known space, but we will not leave as broken refugees. We will leave as humans. And when we return, we will be stronger than ever." The room erupted in arguments. Some called him crazy. Others called him a dreamer, but Commander Kim Yuna supported him. Dr. Song Minji spoke about her research and its potential. Admiral Choi Sang-ho talked about the fleet's capabilities. Slowly a plan began to form. It was desperate and dangerous, but it was also very human. They would use the 1 year to prepare for the greatest journey in human history. They would take their most advanced technology, their brightest minds, their strongest will. They would go beyond the galaxy's edge where no council species had ever traveled. They would build something new, something better, and someday they would return. The meeting ended with a unanimous vote. Humanity would not surrender. They would not beg. They would not fade away into history. They would do what humans had always done when faced with impossible odds. They would survive. They would adapt. They would overcome. As the leaders left the chamber, President Han Jun-ho looked out at the stars through the great window. He thought about the long journey ahead, about the hardships they would face, about the children who would grow up in exile. But he also thought about the strength of the human spirit, about their ability to turn disaster into opportunity, about their talent for building something beautiful from nothing. The aliens thought they were destroying humanity, but they were about to learn something important about the species they had underestimated. Humanity's greatest achievements always came from their darkest moments. The Great Exodus began 6 months after the Council's betrayal. Admiral Choi Sang-ho stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the largest fleet in human history prepare to leave known space forever. Behind him stretched millions of ships, from massive colony vessels carrying entire cities to tiny personal craft holding single families. Every human world was emptying. Earth itself looked like a dying planet as transport ships carried away the last of humanity's treasures. The aliens watched from their warships, making sure humans took only what was allowed: basic supplies, civilian ships, and personal belongings. Advanced military technology had to stay behind on New Tokyo. Families packed their lives into metal containers. Children cried as they said goodbye to their pets that could not make the journey. Parents tried to stay strong while their hearts broke watching their homes being seized by alien forces. The agricultural world of Green Valley looked empty as the last farmers loaded their equipment onto cargo ships. They took seeds and animals, but had to leave behind the massive growing facilities that fed half the Galaxy the Botanics would claim these farms for themselves. Captain Oh Tae-yun commanded the escort vessel, Starbound, one of the few military ships humans were allowed to keep. He watched sadly as the alien fleet surrounded the human convoy like prison guards. The Avrans flew in attack formations while the Lithoids powered their weapons systems. The journey began slowly. The massive convoy could only move as fast as its slowest ship. Families huddled together in cramped quarters while engineers worked day and night to keep old ships running. Food was rationed, water was recycled, and hope was hard to find, but humans had always been survivors. Chief Engineer Ko Sunwoo worked miracles with broken equipment. He turned cargo holds into workshops and factories. Soon the fleet was making its own spare parts and tools. Dr. Yang Yunbi created growing chambers. In every available space, fresh vegetables and protein grew in spaces that once held personal belongings. The first year was the hardest. Ships broke down in the void between stars. Families went hungry when supply ships failed to reach them. Disease spread quickly in the crowded conditions. Many humans died, and their bodies were given to space in simple ceremonies. But something amazing happened during those dark months. Humans from different worlds started working together like never before. The engineers from Industrial Prime taught farming techniques to the scholars from Academic Station. The soldiers from Military Base 7 learned hydroponics from the gardeners of Paradise World. Admiral Choi Sang-ho made a decision that changed everything. He opened the fleet's communication networks to everyone, rich or poor, military or civilian. Everyone could talk to everyone else. Ideas flowed like water through the convoy. People shared solutions to problems they had never faced before. In the second year, they encountered something unexpected. A small fleet of strange ships appeared ahead of them. These vessels were unlike anything in Council records. They moved without engines and seemed to bend space around them. The ships belonged to the wanderers, an ancient species that had been exiled from the galaxy thousands of years ago. Their leader, Elder Vorthak, was incredibly old, but still sharp and wise. He had watched the rise and fall of many civilizations. The wanderers had survived in the void between galaxies for longer than human history. They knew secrets that the Council had forgotten: how to find resources in empty space, how to navigate by reading dark matter patterns, how to build ships that could travel forever. Elder Vorthak met with Admiral Choi Sang-ho aboard the New Horizon. The alien was tall and thin, with silver skin and eyes that held ancient sadness. He spoke in a voice like distant thunder. "We know why you're here, young humans," he said. "The Council fears what they cannot control. They have done this before to others like us." The Wanderers shared their knowledge freely. They taught humans how to read the energy patterns that flowed through dark space. They showed them how to find metals and minerals in asteroid fields that seemed empty. They gave them star charts of the galaxy's edge, where no Council ship had ever traveled. Dr. Song Minji was fascinated by Wanderer technology. Their ships used principles that human science was only beginning to understand. When she asked Elder Vorthak about their power source, he smiled mysteriously. "The universe is full of energy, young scientist," he said. "You just need to know how to listen to it." The Wanderers led the human fleet to ancient ruins scattered across dead worlds. These structures were incredibly old, built by a civilization that had vanished millions of years ago. The ruins contained strange devices that seemed to respond to human touch. Dr. Song Minji's research team studied these artifacts day and night. They found that the devices could amplify quantum fields and manipulate matter at the molecular level. When combined with human technology, they created effects that seemed impossible. Lieutenant Park Sora was the first human to successfully interface with one of the artifacts. She placed her hand on a crystalline surface, and suddenly her mind was filled with images of vast machines and incredible cities. The ancient builders had left instructions in their technology, but the journey was far from over. In the third year, the fleet encountered its greatest challenge yet. A massive storm of dark matter blocked their path. Space itself seemed to twist and tear as reality bent around them. The storm was like nothing in human experience. Ships that entered it simply vanished, consumed by forces beyond understanding. The convoy was trapped, unable to go forward or back, while the storm grew larger and more violent. Captain Oh Tae-yun made a decision that would be remembered forever. He took his ship starbound into the heart of the storm. Using the new quantum technology his engineers had developed, he turned his reactor into a massive energy beacon. The starbound became a lighthouse in the chaos, guiding other ships through the twisting passages of distorted space, but the effort was too much for the small vessel. As the last civilian ship reached safety, the starbound's hull began to crack. Taiyan's final message was broadcast to the entire fleet: take care of each other. He said, remember that we are still human, no matter how far we travel. His sacrifice opened a path through the storm, and the fleet passed through safely, but they had lost a hero, and everyone felt the weight of his death. The convoy held a memorial service in the void with millions of lights shining in the darkness. Finally, after 3 years of travel, they found their destination. The Haven Cluster was a group of star systems hidden in a fold of space-time. The Wanderers had told them about this place, but seeing it was incredible. 12 star systems with dozens of worlds spread before them. Some planets were rich with life, others were barren but full of minerals. All of them were free of council control. All of them could become home. The largest world was similar to Earth, but with purple skies and silver seas. They named it New Earth and claimed it as their capital. Admiral Choi Sang-ho sent scouts to every world in the cluster, while the main fleet established orbital stations. For the first time in 3 years, humans felt hope again. Children played in the ship quarters again. Adults made plans for the future again. The long journey was over, but the real work was just beginning. They had found sanctuary in the void beyond the galaxy's edge. Now they had to build something new, something that would honor the sacrifice of those who had died getting them here. The last entry in Admiral Choi Sang-ho's log read simply, we have arrived. The hardest part starts now. The Haven Cluster was beautiful but deadly settlement. Commander Lim Ji-hoon stood on the surface of New Earth, watching the purple sunrise paint the silver seas. He breathed the alien air through his helmet and felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. This world would be humanity's new home, but it was not ready for human life. The atmosphere was poisonous. The soil was barren. The weather was violent. Storms that could kill anyone caught outside. The native life forms were aggressive and hungry, but humans had never let impossible odds stop them before. Teams of engineers and scientists worked day and night to make the harsh world livable. Dr. Kang Hae-jin led the biological research, studying every plant and animal to understand how life survived. Here, the first settlement was built in a valley between 2 mountain ranges. The mountains provided protection from the worst storms, while underground springs gave them water. The colonists called it Hope Valley, and it became the center of human civilization in the cluster. The early months were brutal. People died from alien diseases that their immune systems could not fight. Equipment failed in the corrosive atmosphere. Strange creatures attacked anyone who ventured too far from the settlements, but humanity's greatest strength was their ability to adapt and learn. Engineer Sco Donghae studied the planet's geology and discovered that the purple sky was caused by unusual mineral deposits. These same minerals could be used to create incredibly strong building materials. Dr. Kang Hae-jin made breakthrough after breakthrough in understanding alien biology. She found that some of the native plants could be modified to grow earth crops. The aggressive animals could be tamed if approached correctly. Some of the deadly bacteria could actually be used to create new medicines. The real transformation began when Dr. Song Minji unlocked more secrets of the ancient artifacts. The devices responded to human neural patterns in ways they never responded to other species. It was as if they had been designed specifically for human minds. Using the artifacts, Dr. Song Minji's team created technologies that seemed like magic fusion reactors that were 10 times more efficient than anything the Council had ever built. Construction methods that could shape metal and stone with thought alone. Transportation systems that moved people and goods instantly across vast distances. The breakthrough came when they learned to combine human innovation with ancient knowledge. The artifacts could manipulate matter at the quantum level, but they needed human creativity to direct that. Power engineers became artists, sculpting cities from raw materials in days instead of years. As word spread through the cluster, other human settlements began to thrive. The mining colony on Iron Mountain extracted rare metals that made their technology even more advanced. The research station on Dead Moon discovered energy sources that could power Entire worlds, but the most important discovery came from the outer edge of the cluster. Strange ships appeared at the edge of their sensor range. These vessels belonged to other species that had been exiled by the Council, just as humanity had been. First contact was with the Forgetfathers, a race of master craftsmen, who had been cast out for refusing to share their advanced manufacturing techniques. Their ships were works of art, covered in intricate designs that served both beauty and function. Captain Lee Min-ho met with Forgetfather Prime Artificer Kethanol aboard the New Horizon. The alien was small and metallic with 4 arms that moved independently. His voice sounded like music when he spoke. "We heard about your journey, young humans," he said. "The Council tried to destroy us too, but we survived in the void. We have been waiting for others like us." The Forgetfathers brought knowledge of advanced materials and construction techniques. They could create metals that were stronger than anything known to science and build structures that could withstand any force. Next came the Voidborn, a species of living computers that had been exiled for developing true artificial intelligence. The Council feared that intelligent machines would replace organic life, but the Voidborn only wanted to learn and explore. The Voidborn appeared as shifting patterns of light and energy. They could interface directly with human computers and helped upgrade every system in the human fleet. Their leader entity, Prime Zero, spoke in mathematical equations that somehow conveyed deep emotion. Then came the Guardians, warrior poets who had been banished for questioning Council authority. They were tall and proud with crystalline armor that changed color with their moods. Their leader, Commander Shard High, fought with weapons that sang as they moved together. These 4 species formed the Exile Alliance with humanity as the driving force. They shared technology and knowledge freely, creating innovations that none of them could have achieved alone. General Bei Suyang established the Haven Defense Force, combining human adaptability with alien expertise. The soldiers trained on harsh worlds with equipment that seemed impossible by Council standards. Human Marines learned to fight alongside Forgetfather war machines. Voidborn tactical computers provided perfect battlefield information. Guardian warriors taught humans how to channel their emotions into physical strength. The training was brutal but effective. Soldiers learned to survive in vacuum without suits, to fight in toxic atmospheres, to battle enemies that could manipulate reality itself. The harsh worlds of the Haven Cluster became the perfect training ground. Dr. Song Minji's research expanded. As she studied artifacts from all the exiled species, each race had found different types of ancient technology. The Forgetfathers had discovered manufacturing systems. The Voidborn had found information networks. The Guardians had located weapon systems. When combined, the technologies created something unprecedented. The Alliance could terraform dead worlds in months instead of centuries. They could communicate instantly across galactic distances. They could build fleets that appeared anywhere. Without warning, the Alliance created a new form of government based on merit and innovation rather than tradition and fear. Each species contributed their strengths while learning from others. The Council's old system of rigid hierarchy was replaced with fluid cooperation. On New Earth, the capital city of Haven grew from a small settlement into a shining metropolis in just 5 years. The buildings were living works of art that adapted to their environment. Streets flowed like rivers, carrying people and goods where they needed to go. Children from all 4 species played together in the parks, learning each other's languages and customs. Human children learned Forgetfather mathematics. Voidborn children discovered human creativity. Guardian children shared their warrior codes. The educational system was revolutionary. Students learned by doing rather than memorizing. A human child might spend morning learning Voidborn programming, afternoon practicing Forgetfather craftsmanship, and evening studying Guardian philosophy. Trade flowed freely through the cluster. Each world specialized in what it did best. The agricultural worlds fed everyone. The industrial worlds built everything. The research stations solved every problem. Most importantly, the Alliance developed something the Council had never achieved: true unity. They were not held together by fear of punishment or hope of reward. They were united by shared struggle and common purpose. The Alliance military became legendary throughout the cluster. Human adaptability combined with alien technology created forces that could handle any threat. Pirates who tried to raid Alliance worlds found themselves facing enemies they could not understand or defeat. News of the Alliance's success Spread through the exile communities, other species began seeking them out. Refugees from Council oppression found sanctuary in the Haven cluster. The Alliance grew stronger with each new addition. By the end of the first decade, the Alliance controlled over 100 worlds and had developed technology that surpassed anything in Council space. They had not just survived exile, they had thrived beyond their wildest dreams. President Na Youngjai was elected as the first leader of the Haven Republic. Her inauguration speech was broadcast across the cluster and beyond. We came here as refugees, she said. We were broken, scared, and alone. But we rebuilt ourselves into something better. We are no longer the humans who were cast out. We are the Alliance. And we are strong. The message was clear. Humanity and its allies had not just survived their exile. They had used it to become something greater than they ever could have been under Council rule. The galaxy had tried to destroy them. Instead, it had forged them into an empire. 50 years had passed since the exile, and the Haven Empire had grown beyond all recognition. Admiral Park Sungmin stood in the command center of the flagship Eternal Dawn, watching holographic displays show the Empire's vast territories. The Alliance now controlled 300 worlds scattered across 12 star systems. Their technology had advanced so far that even the ancient artifacts seemed primitive by comparison. Ships could appear anywhere in the galaxy. Instantly, cities could be built. In hours, entire worlds could be terraformed. In days, the Imperial fleet was a sight to behold. Sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around them moved through space like living things. Human engineering combined with Forgetfather craftsmanship, Voidborn intelligence, and guardian warrior spirit had created something unprecedented. Captain Yunera commanded the rescue ship Mercy's Hand as it patrolled the edge of known space. Her mission was to help anyone in distress regardless of their species or origin. The Alliance had made helping others a core principle of their society. The distress signal came from deep space near the galactic rim. A ship was dying, its power failing, its crew facing slow death in the void. Captain Yunera ordered her ship to investigate immediately. The vessel was Avirian design, the same bird-like species that had voted to exile humanity decades ago. The ship was called Windcaller, and it was falling apart. Its engines had failed, its life support was dying, and its crew was preparing for the end. Captain Yoon Nara faced a choice. She could ignore the distress call and let the aliens die as payment for what they had done to humanity, or she could do what humans had always done, help those in need. She chose to help. The Mercy's Hand appeared beside the dying Avirian ship in a flash of quantum light. The rescue was swift and efficient. Human medical teams treated the injured aliens while engineers repaired their failing systems. The Avirian captain was named Wind Dancer, and he was shocked by what he saw. Human technology had advanced far beyond anything in Council space. The rescue ship was larger than most Council warships, but it moved with impossible grace when Wind Dancer was brought aboard. The Mercy's Hand, he could barely believe his eyes. The ship's corridors were lined with living metal that adjusted to each person's needs. The medical bay used healing chambers that could cure any injury in minutes. Captain Yoon Nara met with Wind Dancer in the ship's diplomatic suite. The room was beautiful beyond description, with walls that showed peaceful scenes from a dozen worlds. The Avirian captain's feathers trembled with shock and fear. You are human, he said, his voice barely a whisper. But you were exiled, destroyed, it survived. Captain Yoon Nara said simply, we always do. The encounter changed everything. Wind Dancer's report to the Avirian government sent shockwaves through Council space. The humans had not only survived their exile, they had thrived beyond imagination. News of humanity's return spread like wildfire through the galaxy. Some Council members felt guilty about the exile, others feared human revenge. The military leaders began preparing for war, convinced that humanity would seek vengeance. The Council was no longer the unified force it had been 50 years ago. Internal conflicts had weakened their alliance. Several species had left to form their own governments, others had fallen into civil war. The Lithoids had become isolationist, hiding in their crystal cities and refusing to trade with outsiders. The Depths had retreated to their underwater worlds and rarely communicated with anyone. The swarms had split into competing hives that fought each other constantly. Only the Avirians and Botanics remained committed to the old Council, but even they were struggling with internal problems. The galaxy that had once seemed so stable was falling apart. Supreme Commander Zeth Karan of the Lithoids called for immediate military action against the humans. He convinced himself that humanity would attack the Council worlds and try to conquer the galaxy, but President Na Young-jai had a different idea. She called for a diplomatic mission to Council space, not to beg for readmission, but to offer partnership as equals. The Alliance had technologies that could solve many of the Council's problems. The diplomatic mission was led by Ambassador Cho Min-seok, a man who had been born during the exile and had never seen the old galaxy. He represented the new generation of humans who had no hatred for the Council, only pity. The flagship Phoenix Rising was chosen to carry the diplomatic mission. The ship was a masterpiece of Alliance technology, beautiful enough to be a work of art, powerful enough to fight entire fleets. The vessel could defend itself against any threat while carrying enough resources to terraform a planet. When the Phoenix Rising arrived at the old Council capital, the reaction was immediate panic. The ship was unlike anything in Council records. Its hull seemed to be made of living starlight, and it moved through space without visible engines. The docking procedure became a demonstration of human advancement. The Phoenix Rising created its own docking port when the station's facilities proved inadequate. The ship systems automatically adapted to alien technology while maintaining perfect security. Ambassador Cho Min-seok met with the remaining Council leaders in the Great Chamber, where humanity had been condemned 50 years ago. The room looked exactly the same, but everything else had changed. The Council members were older now, and many seemed tired and defeated. The Great Alliance that had once ruled the galaxy was clearly failing. The representatives spoke of problems they could not solve, disasters they could not prevent, but the biggest shock came when they revealed the crisis they had been hiding. The Devourers had returned. Ancient enemies from beyond the galaxy had begun probing Council space. Their scouts had already destroyed several frontier colonies. The Devourers were living nightmares, creatures that consumed entire worlds and converted matter into more of themselves. They had been defeated once long ago, but now they were coming back stronger than ever. The Council's traditional weapons were useless against enemies that could adapt to any attack in real time. Their fleets were being destroyed, their worlds were being consumed, and their people were dying. Ambassador Cho Min-seok listened to their desperate pleas for help with growing understanding. The Council had not just exiled humanity, they had doomed themselves. Without human innovation and adaptability, they were helpless against this new threat. The revelation that followed changed everything. The ancient artifacts found throughout the galaxy were not just random technology, they were part of a vast defense network built by a previous civilization to contain the Devourers only. Beings with the right neural patterns could activate the network, and humans were the only known species that could interface with the ancient technology. The same abilities that had helped them survive exile were the galaxy's only hope. The Council leaders realized they needed humanity's help, but their pride prevented them from asking directly. They had spent 50 years convincing themselves that humans were dangerous and primitive. Ambassador Cho Min-seok made the decision that would define the next phase of galactic history. He offered the Alliance's help freely, not because the Council deserved it, but because innocent lives were at stake. The Alliance will defend the galaxy, he said, not for your sake, but for the billions of innocents who will die if we do nothing. The meeting ended with a formal alliance agreement. The Council would recognize the Alliance as an equal partner in exchange for military aid against the Devourers. As Ambassador Cho Min-seok prepared to return to Alliance space, he looked out at the stars and thought about the journey that had brought them here. Humanity had been cast out as unwanted refugees. Now they were returning as the galaxy's saviors. The first phase of their return was complete. Now the real test would begin. The Devourers were coming, and only the Alliance had the power to stop them. The galaxy that had once tried to destroy humanity now depended on them for survival. The Devourer fleets swept through the galaxy like a plague of darkness, consuming everything in their path. Entire star systems vanished overnight, leaving only empty void where billions of lives had existed. The Council's remaining forces were scattered, and defeated Emperor Lee Jong-suk stood in the war room of the Imperial Palace on New Earth, watching holographic displays show the destruction spreading across the galaxy. His advisors had spent days debating whether to help the species that had Once exiled, the Devourers were unlike any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. They were living weapons that could reshape matter with thought, consume energy directly from stars, and adapt to any attack within minutes. What made them truly terrifying was their intelligence. Each devourer was part of a vast collective mind that learned from every encounter. When one devourer died fighting council forces, all the others instantly knew how to counter those same tactics. The enemy grew stronger with each battle. General Kim Woojin presented the latest intelligence reports from the war zone. His Void Stalkers had been conducting reconnaissance missions deep in enemy territory. The news was worse than anyone had imagined. The Devourers are not just consuming worlds, Your Majesty, he said. They are converting matter into more of themselves. Their numbers are growing exponentially. The Council's military leadership was in complete chaos. Supreme Commander Zeth Karan had been killed when the Devourers overran his flagship. The remaining commanders were fighting separate battles with no coordination. Emperor Lia Jong-suk made the decision that would define his reign. Despite everything the Council had done to humanity, the Alliance would defend the galaxy, not for revenge or conquest, but because it was the right thing to do. The Imperial fleet began the journey back to the galaxy they had left 50 years ago. But this was not the desperate refugee convoy that had fled into exile. This was the mightiest military force ever assembled. Millions of ships moved through folded space, appearing at battle zones across the galaxy. Alliance vessels were works of art that fought like living things. Their hulls were made of adaptive materials that could reshape themselves instantly. The first major engagement occurred at the Threshold, a massive space station guarding the galaxy's edge. The Council fleet was being systematically destroyed when reality suddenly rippled and Alliance ships appeared. Battle became a demonstration of how warfare had evolved in the 50 years since. Exile Alliance ships did not just fight the Devourers, they outhought them. Using quantum tactics and probability manipulation, they achieved something the Council thought impossible. General Kim Woojin's Void Stalkers led the ground assault against Devourer forces that had landed on the station. These soldiers had been forged in the harsh worlds of the Haven Cluster, and they were unlike anything the enemy had faced. The Stalkers fought in perfect coordination with their equipment. Their armor was grown from living metal that adapted to any threat. Their weapons manipulated fundamental forces of reality itself. They moved through the station like ghosts, striking from impossible angles. But the real surprise came when the Devourers tried to adapt to Alliance tactics. The enemy collective mind encountered something it had never faced before. Technology that changed faster than they could learn. Our song. Minji, now elderly but still brilliant, watched the battle from the command center of her research vessel. She had spent 50 years preparing for this moment. Her quantum manipulation technology was finally ready for its ultimate test. The ancient defense network that had been dormant for millions of years suddenly came to life. Artifacts scattered across the galaxy began to glow with power that had been waiting for the right neural patterns to activate it. The tide of battle shifted dramatically as humanity revealed more of their capabilities. Ships that could phase through solid matter, weapons that attacked probability itself, soldiers who could survive in any environment. But the war's greatest challenge was yet to come. Intelligence reports indicated that the Devourer Queen was approaching from the galactic edge. This entity was the size of a small moon and commanded the entire invasion force. The Queen had consumed dozens of star systems to fuel her journey, and she was heading directly for the galaxy's heart. The Council's remaining worlds were evacuated as panic spread through their government's. Earth itself became the final battleground. President Kim Dae-yoon coordinated the largest military operation in galactic history. Alliance forces, human, alien, and artificial intelligence worked together in perfect harmony. The battle for Earth lasted 3 days and nights. The Queen's arrival tore holes in reality itself. As her massive form emerged from hyperspace, she was covered in weapons that could destroy planets and surrounded by millions of smaller Devourers. Alliance fleets engaged the Queen in the space around Earth while ground forces prepared for the inevitable invasion. The planet's defenses had been upgraded with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. General Kim Woojin led the planetary defense while Admiral Park Soo-min commanded the space battle. The coordination between all Alliance forces was perfect. Decades of cooperation had forged them into a single, unstoppable force. The Queen's first attack shattered the moon and sent debris raining down on Earth's surface, but the planet's shields held, and the Alliance counterattacked with weapons that bent the laws of physics. Dr. Song Minji made the discovery that changed everything. The ancient artifacts were not just defensive systems. They were communication devices left by humanity's distant ancestors, a previous human civilization that had transcended physical existence. The revelation was staggering. Modern humans were descendants of an ancient race that had achieved godlike power millions of years ago. The Devourers were their ancient enemies, contained but not destroyed. The transcended humans had left the artifacts as a test, waiting for their descendants to develop the neural patterns needed to activate them. Only modern humans could access the full power of the ancient network. In the battle's crucial moment, President Kim Dae-yoon activated the complete defense system. The artifacts across the galaxy formed a vast network of power that responded to human will alone. The Queen found herself trapped in a web of energy that negated her abilities. Her massive form began to dissolve as the ancient weapons finally fulfilled their purpose. The Devourer collective mind screamed in frequencies that shattered reality. The final battle was not won through violence, but through understanding. The transcended humans had left one last message in the artifacts. They had not destroyed the Devourers because destruction was not the answer. Instead, they had created a prison of light that would contain the enemy forever. The Queen and her forces were not killed but transformed, changed into something that could never threaten the galaxy again. The Great War ended with the Devourers' complete defeat, but the cost had been enormous. Several council species were extinct, their worlds consumed or abandoned. The survivors faced a harsh new reality. The galaxy needed rebuilding, and only the Alliance had the power to do it. The same humans who had been cast out as refugees were now the galaxy's protectors and saviors. As the last Devourer ship was contained within the ancient prison, Emperor Lee Jong-suk stood on the bridge of his flagship looking out at the stars. The exile is over, he said to his officers. We have come home. But they had not returned as the same species that had been cast out. They had become something greater, forged by hardship into an empire that would reshape the galaxy. The Great War was over, but the galaxy lay in ruins. Empress Shinya-jin stood in the rebuilt council chambers looking out at representatives from dozens of species. The old order had died with the Devourer invasion, and something new had to take its place. The cost of victory had been staggering. 3 council species were completely extinct, their worlds consumed before the Alliance could save them. The depths had lost their homeworld and now lived in floating cities. The swarms had been reduced to a single hive mind. The survivors faced a choice. They could try to rebuild the old council with its rigid hierarchies and ancient prejudices, or they could embrace the new order that the Alliance offered, a galaxy based on cooperation rather than competition. Empress Shinya-jin had been elected leader of the Alliance after Emperor Lee Jong-suk's death in the final battle. She was young, but she carried the wisdom of her people's long journey from exile to triumph. The Alliance offers more than military protection, she said to the assembled representatives. We offer a new way of living together, a galaxy where every species can contribute their strengths without fear. The transformation began immediately. Alliance technology spread across the galaxy like healing medicine. Dead worlds were brought back to life in months rather than centuries. Medical advances cured diseases that had plagued alien species for thousands of years. The terraforming process was miraculous to watch. Human quantum manipulators worked with Forgetfather construction systems, while Voidborn computers calculated optimal atmospheric compositions. Guardian warriors protected the work sites from any remaining dangers. On the world of Crystal Home, the Lithoids watched in amazement as their poisoned atmosphere was cleaned in just weeks. The Alliance terraforming teams worked around the clock using technology that seemed like magic to species that had been struggling with basic survival. Dr. Park Hyunwoo led the medical research teams that brought hope to countless species. The plague that had been killing the botanics for generations was cured in days using modified human immune responses. The Avirians' genetic weakness that caused their short lifespans was eliminated completely, but The greatest achievement was not technological, it was social. The Alliance created the Harmony Stations. Massive space habitats where all species could live and work together. These stations were built at the intersection of major trade routes. The first Harmony Station was called Unity, and it became a symbol of the new galactic order. The station was the size of a small moon with different sections adapted for every species' needs. Avirians could fly through vast aerial chambers, while depths swam in enormous water tanks. Children from all species played together in the station's parks, learning each other's languages and customs without the prejudices their parents had carried. A new generation was growing up that saw diversity as strength rather than weakness. The educational system on the Harmony Stations was revolutionary. Students learned by direct experience rather than memorization. A young lithoid might spend morning learning human emotional expression, afternoon studying botanic growth patterns, and evening practicing guardian combat techniques. Trade flowed freely through the new galactic network. The Alliance had eliminated the old system of taxation and barriers that had restricted commerce for centuries. Every world could specialize in what it did best, while sharing in the prosperity of all. The agricultural worlds of the former council space were transformed using Alliance growing techniques. Crops that had taken seasons to mature now grew in weeks. Food that had been scarce became abundant enough to feed every hungry mouth in the galaxy. Industrial production reached levels that seemed impossible. The combination of human innovation, father craftsmanship, and void-born precision created manufacturing systems that could build anything from starships to clothing in minutes. Some species struggled with the rapid changes. The proud Avirians found it difficult to accept that their former enemies had become their protectors. The remaining lithoids retreated into meditation, trying to understand how their perfect crystal logic had failed them, but others embraced the transformation wholeheartedly. The wanderers who had helped humanity during their exile became valued partners in exploration and trade. Their knowledge of the galaxy's hidden places proved invaluable in the rebuilding effort. The military structure of the New Order was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. The Alliance Defense Force was not an army of conquest, but a force of protection. They intervened only to stop aggression and help those in need. General Bei Suyang, now an elderly veteran, trained the new generation of peacekeepers. Her soldiers came from every species, but they all shared the same values: protect the innocent, stop the aggressors, help those in need. The Alliance military bases were not fortresses, but cities where soldiers and civilians lived together. The warriors trained not just in combat but in construction, medicine, and diplomacy. They were builders as much as fighters. The most remarkable change was in space travel itself. The Alliance had perfected instant transportation between any 2 points in the galaxy. Travel that had once taken months now took minutes. Communication that had been delayed by distance became immediate. The quantum communication network connected every world in the galaxy, allowing instant coordination of trade, disaster relief, and cultural exchange. The old barriers of time and distance that had kept species apart simply disappeared. But the greatest achievement was the end of scarcity. The Alliance had solved the fundamental problem that had driven galactic conflict for millennia. There was now enough of everything for everyone. Energy, food, raw materials, and living space were abundant. The memorial on New Earth honored all who had died during the exile and the war. Both human and alien names were carved into the living stone that grew and changed with each passing season. Children of all species came to learn about the price of peace. Ambassador Park Ji-won, now ancient but still sharp, attended the memorial's dedication ceremony. She had been present when humanity was exiled, and now she watched as the galaxy celebrated their return. We were cast out as refugees, she said in her speech, but we returned as liberators. The Council feared our strength, but they never understood our purpose. We did not seek to conquer, we sought to build. The final transformation came when the Alliance established the Galactic Senate, a governing body where every species had an equal voice regardless of their size or military power. The old Council's hierarchy was replaced with true democracy. The Senate met in a magnificent chamber that rotated through different worlds each session. This ensured that no single species could dominate the government and that all voices would be heard. Empress Shin Yejin's final act as leader was to dissolve the Alliance's emergency powers and transfer authority to the elected Senate. She had guided the galaxy through its darkest hour and now she gave the people control of their own future. The new galactic order was not perfect. There were still conflicts and disagreements, but there was also hope and opportunity for growth. The galaxy had learned that diversity was not weakness, but strength. Trade routes buzzed with ships carrying goods and people between worlds. That